after we go through a loss, wonder about this and just what our purpose is. And I think it trips a lot of people up, and we get so desperate to find it. And I just want to strip the layers back on that because I think there's this belief that our purpose in life has to be something really big. And while I think there's definitely a consensus that we are sort of put on this planet, so to speak, if you will, for a specific purpose or reason, I feel like the way in which that happens can show up in a lot of different ways, right? Welcome to Mourning Sips and Soul Shifts. Welcome back to the Life with Grief podcast and this episode of Mourning Sips and Soul Shifts. I invite you to pull up a seat in the Life with Grief lounge, as I have recently been loving to call this little space that we share together. And anytime you come here and listen or view one of these episodes, depending on how and where you stream, I really want this to be just a cozy corner for you where we can kick back, relax, have some honest, heartfelt conversations about life and grief and loss and all the things, and really just be a place where you can proverbially kick off your shoes, grab your coffee or whatever your favorite beverage is, and just know that you are not carrying your grief alone. If you are newer here or you're just getting to know me, I'm your host, Tara Accardo, and together we will navigate the hard, the hopeful, and everything in between. But before we dig into this episode, I wanted to first acknowledge that as of the time of this recording, it is World Podcasting Day tomorrow, September 30th. And with that, I really just wanted to take a really quick moment to express my very deep gratitude to every single one of you who has tuned into the Life with Grief podcast, even if it was just once. Maybe you're one of those who have been with me since day one. Maybe you have been here since the name of this podcast changed, because FYI, it was originally called the Losses Become Gains podcast. I did, in fact, rebrand. So perhaps you have been with me through that. Or maybe you have more recently found me. And I have actually had the pleasure of speaking with a handful of you recently, more recently at least, discovered this podcast. And I am just so grateful to be getting to know a lot of you better and hear your stories. And every single listener and fellow griever that I speak with outside of the podcast, every single guest that I speak with on the podcast truly shifts something in me. Every single conversation helps me gain a deeper understanding and perspective of the world and grief and loss and life and what all of that truly is and what that means and what all of that really entails. And I am just incredibly grateful because it, of course, not only helps me grow as a person individually, selfishly, but I love it because I feel I can then apply those learnings and bring that back to you in spades and just give you more meaningful and deeper and impactful conversations and coping tools and all the things. And so I could go on and on about this, but in honor of World Podcasting Day, I just wanted to express my gratitude and say thank you, thank you, thank you to each and every one of you. While my passion for providing, that relatable, raw, honest grief and loss support and guidance runs so, so deep, and I would be here regardless because I love podcasting so, so, so much. Again, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I actually do have a second podcast, the Taste Toast Travel podcast with my husband, John. That is so fun. It is a complete departure from this podcast in a lot of ways, but should just go to show you how much I genuinely do love podcasting and what I do here. Just a massive thank you to each and every one of you, because as much as I love it, it's all of you that really keeps this going and keeps me going. So that all being said, with that all out of the way, I wanted to talk about something that comes up a lot in my work as a grief coach and guide. I almost resonate more right now I'm like leaning more towards the word guide versus coach, but whether I'm guiding someone through their grief or guiding someone along the path to discover their soul's purpose, this comes up a lot in my work, but it has also come up in my own journey of life after loss. And that is that idea of purpose. And I almost feel like this has become perhaps a little buzzwordy lately. I think more people are catching on to purpose. Not that this is anything new whatsoever, but I think a lot of us, after we go through a loss, wonder about this and what that means and what that feels like and just what our purpose is. And I think it trips a lot of people up and we get so desperate to find it. And I just want to strip the layers back on that a little bit because I think there's this belief that our purpose in life has to be something really big, something monumental, like starting a nonprofit or changing careers or writing a book or, just discovering this one ultimate calling. And I think I've listened to a lot of other podcasts and other professionals and people who studied and continue to study purpose and our dharma and all of these beautiful things. And while I think there's definitely a consensus that we are sort of put on this planet, so to speak, if you will, for a specific purpose or reason, I feel like the way in which that happens can show up in a lot of different ways, right? So for me, it's grief and loss support. It's working with people that have been through a really devastating loss of some kind, and it's guiding them through that and being that ally and that shoulder to lean on or cry on or whatever, and creating community around that. And the way I do that shows up in many different ways, right? Through my community, through my podcast, through coaching. And while those things are all beautiful, those kind of like big quote unquote things that I just mentioned, that's amazing if those things do happen. But I just want to offer you and give you just a big exhale here today and say that purpose doesn't have to look like that. Especially when you're grieving, purpose can be small and gentle and simple and build on itself. And that still matters. That still matters a lot. In fact, that matters most in that moment. And I know that through the work that I do, and I have learned that the hard way in my own experience. And so, in saying that, I just want to acknowledge how overwhelming, quote, finding your purpose can feel after loss. Many of us get to a point after the shock and despair and anguish, the quote, worst of it, at least, wears off a little bit when we're sort of out of the fog and we start to get curious about that. It's in that we sometimes find ourselves wanting more, wanting to live more, wanting more purpose, to find more joy, things that light us up more fulfillment, more purpose. But we might not have any idea what that looks like or feels like, or how to tap into that, or what that even means for us. And it can feel like a lot. And especially in this day and age of social media and seeing everyone around us doing all the things and they see themselves leaning into their purpose, or so it seems. And I fall into this trap all the time, both in and out of this grief space that I work in, honestly. And I'm not going to lie, it really clouds my own judgment and my own intuition at times. And so I find that I really have to check myself. So I just want to give you a friendly reminder as well to let this be such a deep lesson in intuition and leaning into what truly feels good to you, because there's a lot of noise out there. Let me just put it that way. So I'll get off my soapbox about that. But there is just some pressure around all of this sometimes for people, because they can, especially as grievers, we can end up feeling like we have to find our purpose or make something out of our grief and what happened, right? Or maybe this resonates with you not because you feel like you have to find meaning and purpose. Maybe you're just curious about it. Maybe you're just learning about this and finding out what that actually really means and just being curious about the process of that unfolding. And I would say I kind of fell into the latter of those two things. I had kind of heard the term purpose and things like that, but I didn't really know what that meant until I felt myself getting into this work that I'm doing now, and then was presented with the opportunity to become a certified soul purpose and transformational life coach. And then I was like, ah, okay, I get it. This is it. This is happening. This is me beginning to embody that. But there's a big myth here that I want to just debunk really quick. And that's the whole point of this little mini-sode today. And that is that purpose has to be big or life-changing. And many times it is. That's the magical part of it. But my reframe for you today, especially depending on where you are in your grief or where you sort of are in this process, is that, quote, small purposes are powerful, valid, and sustaining. And I think that's the really critical piece here in this process of self-discovery and all of this unfolding. It really does take those smaller but impactful moments to ultimately lead us into the larger purpose. So let's break this down just a little bit more. We live in a culture that I think is becoming increasingly obsessed with finding your purpose. And listen, as I've mentioned, as a soul purpose guide, I realize how funny and ironic that might be coming from me right now. But a lot of the time, I think it's framed as this huge life defining thing. And while that might be the case, I never want that to be what you feel, at least not for me or really from anyone else. Because what's so magical about tapping into our purpose is that, sure, it could become something big. And that's amazing if it does, but it doesn't have to be. It comes down to living in alignment and in our most embodied state. And I did another mini-sode recently on that. So you are welcome to go listen to that. I think that was only 1 or 2 weeks ago. I will link that here in the show notes as well, so you can access it quickly. But what's special about our purpose is twofold in my eyes. It's one, serving the greater good and approaching the world from a really soulful place that will bring something good and beautiful to the world. And two, it means that you are living in the highest possible alignment with yourself and in your highest good, which ultimately, if we are doing that, that is going to get reflected back out into the world and onto other people and the universe and all the pretty things. And imagine if this is quite a utopia I'm hoping and imagining, hoping for and imagining here. But what if we all were living in alignment and embodying what we were supposed to and giving so much good energy back into the world? Can you imagine how much that would bounce off of each other and just raise the collective frequency? I mean, it would be incredible. And especially in the time that we live in, I am hoping for that more than ever. I am manifesting that. But let's take this back a little bit, because if you're grieving, just surviving your day can already feel like a mountain to climb. So you might be like, Tara, that was all really pretty, fluffy, shiny things you were just talking about there, but I am not there yet. My vibrational frequency is very low. I am grieving. I'm going through a difficult time. And my friend, I honor that wherever you are at. You don't have to be there right now. But adding this extra pressure of needing to discover your big purpose can feel paralyzing and honestly a bit unrealistic. Maybe not a bit, maybe a lot unrealistic for where you are right now. And I feel like there's this cultural narrative that again, purpose has to be some grandiose thing. And, it's this big buzzword that we all want to find, but we have to acknowledge the pressure that this puts on someone who is already exhausted from grief. And so I just want to caution you today, be very mindful of that coming in from anyone around you. But more importantly, I think this is where we are sometimes our harshest critic, and we get on ourselves to want to find this, and we claw at it to try and find it. I can't even tell you how many clients I work with that they'll come to me and we'll do the soul purpose work, and they're just like, can you just tell me what mine is? Like, can we get there faster? I want to get there faster. And it's that classic, if you're too focused on the destination, you lose all of the magnificent journey. And I think for a lot of us who are grieving, especially, truthfully, this often leads to sort of an analysis paralysis a little bit, instead of finding healing and easing into the process of discovering our purpose in the first place. So it defeats the whole point, because that's the journey we need to pay attention to. And I also want to note here that sometimes I think purpose gets conflated with productivity. We think it has to be measurable, flashy, or, again, life altering. And I'm going to continue saying this. Maybe it will be. Maybe it will be for nobody but you. But the truth is, purpose doesn't always announce itself with fireworks and a whole new business or job or life, which, let me tell you, my friend, I thought it would. I genuinely, when I went, especially into my certification to do this work, I really thought it was going to be more of a slap in the face than it was. And let me tell you, it was not. It was anything but that, in the best possible way. So today, let's release any pressure for that to be the case and start with a much smaller, more manageable step, and talk about the power of small purpose. And there's really, I almost feel funny saying like small versus big purpose, because it's all important, right? But when I say, again, quote, small purpose, I want you to think of that as it being something as simple as making a meal that nourishes you, or making a meal for someone that you love, right? Taking your dog on a walk, calling a friend, showing up to therapy. It might look like, starting a little garden, or volunteering for an afternoon, or creating something that only you will ever see, right? These might not feel big, and it might not even feel like your purpose. But again, that's not the point, right? We don't necessarily even want to go into it thinking that, or like, again, clawing for that outcome. The importance of all of these is that they're meaningful. They give you a reason to get up in the morning. And for those of us who are grieving, that's where we just have to start sometimes before we can even get into this more soulful work, to take that next step, to reconnect with who you are becoming after loss. And I think that's really the most important part, frankly, is getting to know ourselves, getting in touch with this new version of us, first and foremost, to even understand what this new version's purpose is going to be. And here's the thing that I think is important to remember. I'm using this term very loosely today, okay? This small purpose compounds. One small choice today leads to another tomorrow. And over time, these tiny acts of purpose rebuild your sense of self and your confidence to step into bigger things when you're ready. And I assure you, you will know when you're ready. It's undeniable, because again, when you are living in your most embodied state and you are living in alignment, you know when things feel good and when things feel aligned and when things are completely and utterly misaligned. I've talked about that in other episodes before. So often it just naturally unfolds for you. And I understand how we might be very impatient in awaiting for that to happen, but that is where the most sacred work does in fact happen. And this is exactly how it went in my case, right? Like I never envisioned my life being so focused and centered on grief work and supporting fellow grievers and speaking so openly about any of this, but I felt drawn. I really I can't explain it. And I have gone into this on other episodes of the podcast, so I won't belabor this, but just how I founded Losses Become Gains and this podcast, but I just felt very led. And it began with writing, it began with the Losses Become Gains blog, and then snowballed into other things, and eventually this podcast, and lots of other things that I'm building and mini programs and just so many delicious, amazing things. And then a second podcast with my husband because I realized how much I love podcasting. Here we go. I don't know if my purpose is supposed to be a podcaster. I think it's absolutely a part of it. But my point in saying all of that is the most beautiful thing is these seemingly little things that we explore, that we try at least, help rebuild self-trust and that identity that we often feel like we're really missing when we go through something devastating, when we've suffered a loss. And I have been there. It's because of all of that that I am now in this place where I am at speaking to you right now. And that compounding effect of small purpose creates momentum and resilience. And it is awesome to see where that can lead. It's so empowering. And once it starts, you can feel that momentum. And that is often when purpose begins to reveal itself, not by forcing it into existence like I see so many people do, like I myself was trying to do just a few years ago. So let's just close this out by redefining purpose and grief specifically. What feels like purpose for you today might shift in 6 months or 6 years, and that's okay. That's amazing, actually, because in my view, at least, it means you're evolving and growing and learning and perhaps getting even closer to whatever that purpose is. And in the meantime, you're exploring. As I mentioned, right? You're trying new things. You're living life with curiosity and fun and play and openness. And that's all we can truly ask of ourselves after going through such loss, whatever that loss is for you. But right now, your purpose might simply be to breathe, to nurture yourself, to keep showing up even when it's hard. And that is still a very sacred purpose that has to be taken care of before you can get to any of the other stuff. And when you think about it, purpose at its core is just about what gives us meaning. Again, I use this term a lot lately, but I'm going with it. What lights us up, what sparks joy, what keeps us tethered to life. And that doesn't have to be massive, at least not right now, right? It can be tender. It can be as ordinary as you want it to be, or as ordinary as it is showing up for you right now, as long as it makes you feel aligned and happy. It can be enough for right now. And if anything else feels like too much right now, or you're just lacking clarity around that, amazing. Lean into that. Acknowledge that, harness that, and use that. Keep coming back to the play, the fun, the curiosity, and the openness, because that is really what is going to help continue motivating you and propel you forward. So let your purpose meet you exactly where you're at today. So if you have been putting pressure on yourself to discover some huge purpose after loss, or purpose of any size, really, let this be your permission slip to release that. Because your purpose right now might just be to take care of yourself in the smallest of ways, wherever you're at, and just being and you can build on it from there, right? So, to close us out, I will leave you with this reflection. What is one small thing in your life right now that feels like purpose? One little thing that brings you back to yourself, even for a moment. And if you don't have one, that's okay. Consider what that might be. What would that look like for you if you had it? No holds barred, in your absolute dream world. What would that be for you? Allow yourself to dream and have fun with that thought today. And remember, I have free downloadable tools and little prompts and guides and things. This is all available in the show notes that are great for reflections and things like this and could really help you along. So if you need a little more guidance or prompting on this, definitely check those out. And remember that seemingly small purpose is still sacred purpose. And that is the key to unlocking the bigger purpose, the bigger stuff. So I really encourage you to lean into that, have fun with it. Like I said, get curious, get open with it, and it will continue to reveal itself to you. All right. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here today in the Life with Grief Lounge. And remember that this comfortable, cozy space, that's how I want it to feel at least, it's always open to you. There are plenty of episodes here to help you wherever you are along this path, and you can come back anytime you need just some comfort, clarity, or just to hopefully feel less alone. And until next time, take gentle care with yourself. I'll see you in the next episode.